friends! Welcome back! Today, we're going on an amazing adventure back in time to talk about one of the most incredible miracles in the Bible. Imagine you've been wandering in a desert for a super long time, like 40 years. That's exactly what happened to the Israelites. They were finally about to enter the special land God had promised them, called the Promised Land. But there was one giant problem in their way, a huge, rushing river called the Jordan River. Now, this wasn't just any old river. It was the harvest season, which meant the Jordan was overflowing its banks, making it extra wide, deep, and super fast. It was totally impossible to cross. But God had a plan, and He had a brave new leader for the people, whose name was Joshua. After their long journey in the wilderness, the Israelites were camped right at the edge of this big river. God spoke to Joshua and gave him some very specific instructions. God told him, "Joshua, get the people ready. Tell them to make their hearts right with me, because tomorrow you will see something amazing." God promised Joshua that just as He was with Moses, He would be with him too. This was a huge deal. It meant Joshua could be brave and strong because God was on his side. So, Joshua gathered everyone and said, "Okay, everyone, listen up. Tomorrow, God is going to do something wonderful right here in front of us. We need to get ready, not just by packing our bags, but by preparing our hearts to trust and obey God." The plan was pretty unusual. God told Joshua that the priests, who were the special helpers in God's house, had to carry a very important golden box called the Ark of the Covenant. This box wasn't just a fancy container. It represented God's very presence with His people. It was like having God Himself walking with them. Here's the really cool part. God's instruction was for the priests carrying the ark to walk right into the roaring Jordan River. Can you imagine? Walking into a flooded river sounds a bit scary, right? But the people had to have faith. Joshua told them, as soon as the feet of the priests carrying the ark of the Lord touched the water of the Jordan, the water would stop flowing. So the next day, everyone lined up. You could probably feel the excitement and maybe a little bit of nervousness in the air. The priests lifted the heavy Ark of the Covenant onto their shoulders. They started walking towards the river, leading the entire nation of Israel. All the people stood back a little way, watching to see what would happen. The priests kept walking, getting closer and closer to the edge of the churning water. They took a deep breath, and then splash! Their feet went right into the Jordan River. And in that exact moment, the most incredible thing happened. The water flowing down from upstream just stopped. It piled up in a big heap, far, far away, like a giant water wall. And the water downstream continued to flow away, leaving a wide, dry path right through the middle of the riverbed. It was a miracle. The ground wasn't even muddy or squishy. It was completely dry. So, the priests carrying the ark walked to the very middle of the dry riverbed and stood there. They stood firm on dry ground while all the people of Israel, millions of men, women, and children, walked across. Can you picture it? A whole nation walking through a river without getting their feet wet. They were leaving the desert behind forever and stepping into their brand new home. This amazing event showed everyone that God was powerful enough to do anything. He could stop a raging river just so His people could cross. And with the Ark of the Covenant right there in the middle, it was a clear sign that God was with them, leading the way. But God didn't want them to forget this incredible day. So, He gave Joshua another special instruction. He told Joshua to choose 12 men, one from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Each man had to go to the spot where the priests were standing in the middle of the river and pick up a big stone from the riverbed. After everyone had safely crossed to the other side, the priests carrying the ark were the last to come out of the river. And as soon as they stepped onto the new land, whoosh, the water came rushing back, and the Jordan River was a big, flooded river again, just like it was before. It was as if nothing had happened, except for the millions of people now on the other side. So, what about those 12 stones? Joshua had the men set them up as a memorial, a special pile of rocks that everyone could see. Joshua told the people, in the future, when your kids ask you, "Hey, what do these stones mean?" you can tell them this amazing story. You can say, "This is where God stopped the Jordan River so we could cross on dry ground." These stones are here to remind us forever that our God is powerful and he always keeps his promises. Each stone represented one of the tribes, showing that they were all in this together, as one big family under God. This memorial wasn't just a history lesson. It was a way to keep their faith strong and to pass the story of God's faithfulness down from generation to generation. This whole story is so much more than just a cool miracle. It's a symbol of big changes. For the Israelites, it was the end of their long, hard journey in the wilderness and the beginning of a new life in the land God had promised their ancestor, Abraham, hundreds of years before. It was God showing he always keeps his promises. It also teaches us a lot about faith and obedience. The people had to trust God's weird-sounding plan and obey Joshua's instructions, even when it seemed scary. By stepping into the water, they showed their faith, and God rewarded that faith with a miracle. It shows us that when we face big, scary rivers in our own lives, if we trust and obey God, he can make a way where there seems to be no way. For Christians, this story has an even deeper meaning. It's like a picture of baptism. When someone gets baptized, they go down into the water and come back up. It's a symbol of leaving an old way of life behind and starting a new life with Jesus. Just like the Israelites left the wilderness behind to enter the promised land, baptism is about leaving our old selves behind to enter into the amazing new life that God promises us through Jesus. Joshua, the leader who guided them across, is also a picture of Jesus. The name Joshua and the name Jesus actually mean the same thing: the Lord saves. Just as Joshua led the people into their earthly promised land, Jesus leads us into our spiritual promised land, a life filled with God's love, grace, and the promise of heaven. So, the crossing of the Jordan River is this incredible story of God's power, his faithfulness, and his love for his people. It shows us the importance of brave leadership, the power of faith, and the need to remember all the wonderful things God has done for us. Those 12 stones were a physical reminder to tell the story over and over again. And that's why we still tell this story today, to remind ourselves that the same God who parted the Jordan River is with us, ready to help us cross whatever rivers we may face. What an awesome story, right? It just shows that with God, nothing is impossible. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and exploring this amazing piece of history. I hope it encourages you to be brave and trust God in everything you do. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. See you next time, and God bless.